Victoria Adams, better known as Posh Spice, and England soccer star David Beckham are now husband and wife. The year's most glamorous, non-royal wedding took place in a small Irish castle before less than 30 people.
This book, David and Victoria: An Invitation to a Wedding, is not just a biography. It is a time capsule from 1999, created at the exact moment when Posh and Becks were being treated like modern royalty. As an item in a Spice Girls collection, it represents something bigger than a wedding. It captures the peak of late 90s celebrity culture, when pop music, football, fashion, and media hype all collided in one couple. Right from the start, the tone of the book is grand and almost fairy tale-like. David Beckham, Manchester United and England football star, and Victoria Adams, known worldwide as Posh Spice, are described as the ultimate modern success story. They are presented as beautiful, glamorous, rich, and adored by millions. The language makes them sound less like two young people in their early 20s, and more like a royal couple stepping into history. That framing is important because this book was designed as a keepsake for fans. It is not trying to be critical or analytical, it is celebrating them. As you go through these opening pages, you can really feel how huge they were at the time. The book reminds us that almost everything they did made headlines. Their photos were in magazines and newspapers constantly. That level of attention is treated here as normal, as part of their world. But from a modern point of view, it also shows the birth of what we now call celebrity branding. Even their relationship, their home life, and their baby are part of the story the public is invited to share. One of the key themes introduced here is the idea that both David and Victoria were always meant for fame. The book goes back to their childhoods and highlights how similar they supposedly were. Both are described as shy children who were also fiercely ambitious. That contrast is important. They were not loud attention seekers, but they had a very clear vision of being stars. Victoria's moment comes when she watches Barry Manilow perform and tells herself that one day she will be on stage like that. David's moment is seeing Manchester United and wanting Brian Robson's number 7 shirt. These are presented like destiny moments, as if their future paths were obvious even then. It fits perfectly with the fairy tale narrative the book is building. Another big point is family. Both are shown as coming from close, supportive homes. Even though they left home at 16 to chase their dreams, he to Manchester United's training scheme and she to theatre college in Epsom, the book stresses that their parents kept them grounded. This is clearly included to balance the glamour. Yes, they are rich and famous, but they are still well-behaved, polite, and family-oriented. That image becomes even more important when the book talks about their son, Brooklyn. They are already being presented not just as stars, but as responsible young parents who want to pass on those same values. Then we move into the romance, which is told in a very cinematic way. David sees Victoria in a Spice Girls video and announces to his friend Gary Neville that she is the one for him. Victoria hears that David likes her and says she set out to get him, even arranging a meeting in the Players' Lounge at Old Trafford. It is a story that sounds almost scripted, like a romantic comedy built around pop and football royalty. From there, the book explains how quickly they became a public couple known for style, glamour, and devotion to each other. Their relationship is framed as the perfect blend of talent, looks, money, and love. The arrival of baby Brooklyn is described as making them feel complete, adding a family dimension to the glamour. As an introduction, this section sets up everything the rest of the book will deliver. Chapter 1 of this book sets the tone in a very clear way. Before we even get to the wedding, the castles and the designer outfits, the story goes right back to David Beckham as a little boy. And as you read this in the book, as a physical item from 1999, you can really feel how it is building the legend of David, almost like the origin story of a superhero, but in football boots. What I love about this as a piece in a Spice Girls and Beckham collection is that it shows how the media wanted us to see him at the time. Not just as a footballer, but as a dreamer, a good son, a family boy, and someone who was always destined for greatness. The chapter starts with one simple idea. David Robert Joseph Beckham only ever wanted one thing: to play for Manchester United. Not just to be a footballer in general, but specifically for that club. That level of obsession is made to sound almost sweet and pure. His dad was a huge Manchester United fan, and every Christmas young David got the latest United kit. Even though the family did not have a lot of money, his parents made sure he had the right boots, the right gear, whatever he needed for football. You can already see the supportive family image being carefully built. We then get the picture of his background. East London born, later moving to Essex. A dad who worked as a kitchen equipment fitter, a mum who was a hairdresser, and 2 sisters. It is very working class, very normal, very grounded. The book even throws in little details like him still loving pie and mash and jellied eels, just to keep that London boy identity strong, even though by this point he is a global star. At school, he was not presented as an academic high flyer. His mum says he was a good artist and always drawing cartoon characters, and she kept his sketchbooks. There is something quite charming about that image, this future international football icon sitting there drawing cartoons. Then there are these funny little domestic details. He was very tidy. He made his own bed. His dad jokes that he is the only man he knows who folds his dirty washing. The football side of his childhood sounds almost relentless. His dad played amateur football and ran a Sunday league side, and David was there from the age of 4. After matches, they would stay behind and practice, crossing, shooting, over and over again. His dad talks about seeing something special in him even then, his control and crossing ability. David himself says there were to be no academic qualifications for him. His focus was completely on football. He talks about watching Manchester United players like Brian Robson and wanting that number 7 shirt. This is framed as the moment the dream really locked in. He did not have a backup plan. When people asked what else he would do, he would just say, football. That single-mindedness is presented as a virtue.
Are you special in the sports world?
Well, I won the Bobby Charlton Soccer School finals, skills finals.
Brilliant, so where are you off to?
Barcelona for 2 weeks.
Then we get a funny teenage rebellion moment. At 14, he got his ears pierced without his mom's permission. She had said no because of the risk during football, but he did it anyway. He ran upstairs when he got home, knowing he was in trouble. In the end, he did not even keep the earring. There is also a strong thread about his appearance. Even as a kid, he wanted designer clothes. His dad says he was always good-looking and popular with girls, and never really went through an awkward phase. That is quite funny when you think about how much his image would later be talked about. His haircuts, his clothes, everything. On the pitch, he was clearly ahead of his age group, playing for older kids at school and scoring huge numbers of goals for his local side. Then comes one of those big turning points. He hears about the Bobby Charlton Soccer School on television and begs to enter. His granddad pays the entry fee, and David describes this as a defining moment in his life. He makes it to the final at Old Trafford and wins. You can imagine how huge that must have felt for a Manchester United-obsessed kid. There is a near miss with Tottenham, which is quite dramatic because his granddad supported them. A scout recommends him, he trains with their youth team, but he still turns up in a Manchester United kit. That detail feels almost symbolic. His loyalty was already fixed. Eventually, the dream call comes. A Manchester United scout has been watching him and wants him to come for trials. David says he jumped in the air and cried. At 16, he leaves home and joins Manchester United's training scheme, living away from his family. This part really pushes the sacrifice angle. While other teenagers are out partying, he is in bed early, lifting weights, watching football on television. He even tries drinking raw egg mixtures after reading about it in Brian Robson's autobiography. He helps the youth team win the FA Youth Cup and becomes close friends with Gary Neville, who we know will later be his best man at the wedding. So even here, the wedding link is quietly being set up. Then comes the rise to fame. He plays for the reserves, has a loan spell, and finally makes the senior Manchester United team. There is that famous goal from inside his own half against Wimbledon, which grabs national attention. He gets into the England team, and with United, he wins the treble. Then we move into the romance, which ties him into the Spice Girls world. He sees a Spice Girls video while away with England, points at Victoria on the screen and says she is the one. It sounds like fate again. Their first meeting is awkward because he is so nervous. He waits until the fourth date to kiss her and says it was worth the wait. His parents talk about meeting Victoria for the first time and being pleasantly surprised at how normal she was. The chapter also covers his proposal, her being pregnant, and then one of the darker moments, the red card incident at the World Cup and the backlash he faced. His parents comfort him, and he says it helped him grow up. Finally, we get to fatherhood. He describes being there when Brooklyn is born. He talks about how having a baby changes his priorities, how he looks at life differently now. He and Victoria say they want to raise their child themselves, not leave everything to a nanny, and that they will be strict. By the end of this chapter, David is not just a footballer. He is the dream son, the dream boyfriend, the dream dad. Chapter 2 shifts the spotlight from football pitches to pop stages. From East London parks to Hertfordshire driveways, and this is where the Spice Girls world really comes into focus. Holding this book as an item from 1999, you can almost feel the media carefully shaping Victoria's image to balance David's story. If he is the hard-working football boy made good, she is the glamorous pop star with a soft, vulnerable backstory. The chapter opens by tackling the posh label straight away. Victoria laughs at it, but the book does not deny that she had a comfortable upbringing. Big house, swimming pool, nice cars, but then comes that classic line that flips the narrative. The only way she might be called spoiled, she says, is that she was given too many hugs. We learn she is the eldest of three, with a sister Louise and brother Christian from a close family. There is even a little show business link in her dad having been in a band in the 1960s, which makes her path seem slightly destined. From the age of 3, she is taking dance lessons, already performing, already a bit of a show-off by her own admission. She describes wearing a skirt like Bucks Fizz and whipping it off in the playground, shouting for everyone to watch. That image is so vivid. Little Victoria already staging her own pop moment in the school playground. Her teachers remember her as pleasant and pretty, not pushy, keen on drama. But once she moves to secondary school, the story gets darker. The book goes into detail about the bullying she experienced. Her dad dropping her off in a gold Rolls Royce did not help. She even says she begged to go in the van instead. That contrast between wealth and wanting to blend in is very strong. She talks very honestly about dreading school, being pushed around, sworn at, threatened. feeling sick in the mornings, worrying about who she would sit with at lunch. It is described as pure hell. For a girl who would later be labeled posh and seen as untouchable, this is a powerful reversal. The glamorous pop star was once a lonely, anxious schoolgirl. But this is also framed as character building. At some point, her attitude changes to, "One day I will have my day." That determination, again, just like David's, she believes her life will change beyond recognition. That sense of destiny runs through both their stories. There is also a funny, slightly sad contrast with her sister being popular with boys, while Victoria says she had no boyfriends and was more interested in clothes. Image and appearance are already central. She gets up 2 hours early to do her hair and makeup for school, only to be told to wash it off when she gets home. She avoids PE because it might mess up her hair, with her mom writing notes to excuse her. Even her school uniform is styled into a tight pencil skirt. It is pure future Posh Spice behavior. Pop culture crushes play a big role too. She is obsessed with Bros, screaming at concerts, convinced she will marry Matt Goss. And then that Barry Manilow moment returns, sitting in the audience thinking she wants to be on stage. These are her early sparks of ambition. At 16, she goes to theater college in Epsom, but this is not a fairy tale stage. She says she does not have natural talent, that she struggled, that some teachers told her she would never make it. That honesty makes the later success feel harder earned. She joins a small touring musical, then answers an advert for a band called Persuasion. This is where the real turning point comes. She sees another advert for a 5-girl band called Touch and secretly auditions, alongside Mel B and Mel C. You can almost see this moment as Spice Girls' history in the making. She leaves Persuasion despite them reacting badly because she feels the new group is more organized. Soon Emma and Jerry join and the Classic Five are formed. The early days living together sound chaotic and fun. Victoria says she found the others loud and over the top at first, coming from a different background, but that feeling fades. Being with them brings her out of her shell. She is the sensible one worrying about tables collapsing while the others dance on them. It is such a clear setup for the posh role in the group dynamic. Touch becomes the Spice Girls under Simon Fuller, and then the explosion happens. Wannabe goes to #1, the album tops the charts. Girl power becomes a catchphrase. Each girl gets a label, and Victoria becomes posh. She jokes that people think she is moody, but she is actually a smiler. She says there is a bit of poshness in her love of nice clothes and restaurants, but she does not have a posh accent. There is a lovely human moment when she talks about finding out Wannabe was #1, while she was alone in a hotel room in Japan. Her parents are partying at home and she ends up crying because she wants to be with them. Her closeness to her family is a constant thread, calling her mom every day, walls covered in magazine covers at home, her sister becoming her assistant. As the Spice Girls conquer the world, do Wembley make Spice World the movie and go on tour? Victoria's story is at its peak. And right in the middle of that, she meets David. Two superstars at the height of fame. She admits to orchestrating their meeting after seeing him in a magazine. Their early dates are shy and slow, with him waiting until the 4th date to kiss her. Again, it is told like a romantic film. Her feelings for him are described as deeper than anything before. She says she is not Posh Spice to him, and he is not a football star to her. She even says when she watches him play, it feels like a different person. Her mom's warning not to go out with a footballer adds a bit of humor. The proposal story mirrors his, with both of them producing rings. Girl power even in the engagement. Then comes pregnancy and the birth of Brooklyn by cesarean at the Portland hospital. The detail about him buying her a very expensive car as a gift feels very of the time, very celebrity. She is determined their fame will not stop them raising their baby themselves. She talks about cooking, cleaning, driving themselves, shutting the door on fame and just talking for hours. It is such a contrast to the public image of endless shopping and designer labels. By the end of this chapter, Victoria's journey has gone from bullied schoolgirl to global pop icon and new mom. And as a chapter in this 1999 book, it is doing exactly what David's chapter did. It builds a narrative that makes the wedding feel like the perfect union of two driven, family-oriented, ambitious people who have both fought their way to the top. As a Spice Girls collectible, this chapter is pure origin story for Posh Spice before she officially becomes half of one of the most famous couples in the world. This chapter, called At Home, is one of the most fascinating parts of the whole book because it does not just show us David and Victoria, the global superstars. It shows how OK Magazine wanted fans in 1999 to imagine Posh and Becks behind closed doors. The chapter opens like a scene from a film. We are taken through winding, tree-lined roads in a wealthy suburb on the edge of Manchester. Already it feels exclusive, private, almost secret. Then we reach electric gates that swing silently open, and we go up a short, steep drive to this grand 100-year-old apartment block. Their penthouse is not marked by a small nameplate. Instead, hanging in the entrance hall is a goal-sized portrait of David and Victoria. That is such a 1999 celebrity power move. It is dramatic, glamorous, slightly over the top, and exactly how OK Magazine wanted fans to see them. There are thick church candles flickering on tall stands by the doorway, and dozens more scattered through the rooms. Everything feels theatrical, romantic, and staged for photographs. The kitchen has a fake leopard print scatter rug, which is such a Posh Spice detail. In the lounge there is a 4-foot elephant, which was a Christmas present from Victoria's mother. That is one of those slightly random, slightly funny details that makes this feel very real and very of its time. The whole apartment is white with pale wood floors, and the book compares it to the loft apartments in Friends and Frasier, which David and Victoria apparently loved watching. The hallway becomes almost like a personal gallery. It is lined with black and white photos of the Spice Girls on tour. David lining up for his opening game at the World Cup, and this extraordinary portrait of Eric Cantona dressed as a Roman emperor, surrounded by Manchester United players, including David, all looking very serious. It is such a dramatic, slightly bizarre image, and it shows how football and pop stardom are completely merged in this home. At the end of the hallway is a door with a silver star that says Brooklyn's Room, and suddenly the tone shifts from glamorous celebrity couple to new parents. Victoria talks very firmly about protecting Brooklyn's privacy. She says she feels really protective and describes being in hospital in her own little world with her baby, calling it the best week of her life. Then there is this very telling moment where she frowns about newspapers claiming she was selling pictures of him. She is clear that Brooklyn will not do pictures until he is old enough to choose. She says he is not a money-making venture. Knowing how huge their media presence was, it is interesting hearing this promise right at the beginning. David says they have accepted they will not get much privacy, but as a family, that is all they want. He talks about hating being away from Brooklyn for football, wanting to see every little new movement he makes. The book really leans into this image of him as a soft, emotional, devoted dad. Then we get the dramatic story of Brooklyn's birth. David was on his way to take Victoria out for dinner when she called to say she had gone into labor. He says he felt sick and panicked while Victoria stayed calm. At the Portland Hospital in London, things moved quickly and Victoria had to have a last-minute cesarean because the baby's head was not in the right position. Her description is very honest. She says all she cared about was having a healthy baby and that your priorities suddenly change. David describes the moment Brooklyn's head appeared and says he just cried. It is very emotional and very personal, especially for a celebrity book. The chapter ends with David saying that after the World Cup drama, the first thing he needed was to go straight to Victoria when he found out she was pregnant. He says they both needed each other's support and that it was a special time. This chapter, The Wedding, is where the book goes into full fairy tale mode. This is presented like a royal event, a fantasy production, and the ultimate moment in the Posh and Becks story.
Victoria Adams, better known as Posh Spice, and England soccer star David Beckham are now husband and wife. The year's most glamorous, non-royal wedding took place in a small Irish castle before less than 30 people.
It was a relaxed David Beckham just hours before the biggest moment of his life. Leaving the wedding preparations, he was out on the golf course with his best man, teammate Gary Neville. Later, fans strained for a glimpse inside the wedding venue at Luttrellstone Castle in Dublin. Hundreds waited to see the guests arriving. They included Manchester United's treble-winning team and the 3 other Spice Girls. The public and press had been kept out, the wedding pictures bought up by a magazine reportedly for £1 million. Away from the crowds, the couples made their vows in front of only 29 close family and friends. A single white dove was released at the end. The Spice Girls aren't due to perform at the reception. The orchestra will play a medley of their songs. Sir Elton John has flown in specially to sing for the couples. One singer wasn't there though. Former Spice Girl Geri Halliwell chose today to unveil a new look, hundreds of miles away in London.
Right from the start, the wedding is described as genuinely fairy tale. There is an enchanted forest feel, vows exchanged in an ivy-covered folly, bridesmaids dressed as fairies, and an actual castle. It sounds less like a celebrity wedding and more like the set of a film. We are told it took 14 months of meticulous planning. Even though experts were hired, David and Victoria are shown as being heavily involved, full of ideas. That is important because the book wants us to see this not as a manufactured event, but as their personal dream. Victoria had said she wanted somewhere unique, green, leafy, deep in the countryside. The location chosen was Luttrellstown Castle near Dublin, a 14-bedroom castle dating from 1794, set on a 560-acre estate with its own golf course. The history is mentioned too, including its links to the Guinness family, which adds this layer of old-world grandeur. The message is clear. This is not just big. This is historic, aristocratic, almost royal. The theme they chose was Robin Hood, which is such a random but very 90s romantic idea. There is greenery, twigs, apples, flowing fabrics in burgundy, dark green, and cardinal purple. Even fresh apples were pierced to release their scent and sewn into ivy along the banisters. That detail alone shows how over-the-top the styling was. Family members had been staying at the castle and watching it transform, with carpets brushed and huge floral displays built. Around 3 p.m. on the 4th of July, both families gather in the entrance hall, emotional that all these months of planning have led to this moment. Victoria's dad Tony gets emotional hearing the orchestra rehearse a special version of Goodbye and has to have a cuddle with Victoria. Then the bridesmaids arrive. Victoria's sister Louise, plus 2 tiny little girls, Liberty and Georgina, dressed as woodland flower fairies with gossamer wings, ivy around wrists and ankles, and coronets of ivy and twigs. It is like a storybook. The other Spice Girls arrive too, Emma, Mel C, and Mel B, with very specific outfits. Emma in white with a Homburg hat, Mel C in white trousers and trainers, Mel B in a long black dress. Guests had colored themes, men in morning suits, women in black and white. Even the dress code is controlled for the aesthetic. Only 29 guests attend the ceremony itself at the tiny ivy-covered folly over a stream. Outside, there are press helicopters in the distance, a reminder that this private fairy tale is still global news. Victoria is fashion drama personified. She arrives slightly late at 4:05 p.m. in her champagne-colored Vera Wang dress, which she describes as very Scarlett O'Hara. The book goes into huge detail about the dress, the Italian satin, the layers of tulle, the corset, the months of fittings. It is treated like a work of art. She wears a diamond and gold coronet and follows the tradition of something old, new, borrowed, and blue. Her bouquet is not classic flowers, but green berries, twigs, blackberries, and brambles, matching the woodland theme. David matches her in a cream suit, waistcoat, cravat, and top hat. And then there is baby Brooklyn in cream combat trousers, little boots, a shirt with his name embroidered on the back, and a cream cowboy hat. It is adorable and slightly hilarious at the same time. The ceremony is led by the Bishop of Cork. There is a stream in the background and helicopters overhead. At one point, he jokes about the helicopter noise. He also includes a funny line about how eyes that seem sweet over cocktails may not seem so loving over shredded wheat, which makes Victoria smile. It brings a bit of humor into all the grandeur. The exchange vows are declared man and wife, and there are cheers and applause. It is emotional but also theatrical. Back at the castle, the scale gets even bigger. Now the rest of the 226 guests arrive. There are fanfares from the battlements, silk flames shooting from turrets, a purple flag with their own crest. It is like a medieval festival mixed with a celebrity gala. Inside, guests drink pink champagne and eat luxury. The couple make a grand entrance down the staircase to the theme from Beauty and the Beast, which they love. That is such a perfect detail. It sums up how this whole wedding is styled like a Disney fairy tale. The marquee for the reception is like a forest palace, with birch trees, foliage, apples, chandeliers draped in greenery. David and Victoria sit on throne like chairs on a raised dais in their own bridal alcove of green velvet. Even Brooklyn has a decorated swinging chair. They are literally presented like king, queen, and heir. The food is described in detail, from soup served in hollowed pumpkins to sticky toffee pudding for the men and summerberry desserts for the women. An orchestra plays Spice Girls songs during dinner, which is such a surreal but amazing crossover between pop concert and royal banquet. The cake is topped with a fondant sculpture of an almost naked David, Victoria, and Brooklyn, and they cut it with a silver sword engraved from their son. It is dramatic and slightly outrageous. The night ends with dancing, then a balcony viewing of a huge firework display set to music. The book closes this chapter saying guests went to bed knowing they had witnessed the wedding of the decade. As part of a Spice Girls collection, this chapter is unbelievable. It captures the exact moment when Posh Spice becomes part of a full-blown modern fairy tale, with football, pop music, fashion, and royalty style imagery all rolled into one. It is over the top, romantic, slightly ridiculous in places, but completely iconic. And this book preserves it exactly as fans were meant to see it in 1999. This book really stands as something more than just a celebrity wedding souvenir. David and Victoria, an invitation to a wedding, is like a glossy time capsule from one very specific cultural moment. When the Spice Girls, Premier League football, fashion, and tabloid fame all collided at full force. Published in 1999 by Northern and Shell plc, the same year the wedding actually took place. And written by OK Magazine's Jim Maloney, this book carries the unmistakable tone of that era's biggest celebrity magazine. OK had already covered the wedding in its weekly issue, But this book was created as a lasting keepsake for fans. And that is exactly how it feels when you look through it now. It is not distant or critical. It is celebratory, intimate, and designed to make readers feel like invited guests to the most talked about wedding of the year. What makes it especially special in the context of a Spice Girls collection is how clearly it captures Victoria at a turning point. Throughout the book, she is still very much Posh Spice. The fashion, the glamour, the leopard print touches, the references to the other girls, the orchestra playing Spice Girls songs at the reception. That pop identity is woven all the way through. But at the same time, the narrative is shifting. She is being presented as a wife, a mother to baby Brooklyn, and one half of a global power couple. As a physical item, this book is also such a perfect piece of memorabilia. It represents the height of Posh and Becks mania, when their names were everywhere and their relationship felt like a national event. For Spice Girls fans, it connects directly to the group's history, because Victoria's identity as Posh Spice is still front and center. For pop culture fans more broadly, it captures the mood of celebrity culture just before the 2000s, when glossy magazine exclusives were everything. So overall, this is not just a wedding book. It is a snapshot of fame, romance, image, and media storytelling at the end of the 20th century. It shows us not only how David and Victoria wanted their wedding remembered, but how OK Magazine and the public were invited to see them. If you enjoyed this deep dive into such an iconic piece of Spice Girls and Beckham history, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss more rare memorabilia, deep dive documentaries, and 90s pop culture gems from the collection.